Hi guys, this is gsmo.com and I'm here with the Motorola Moto 5G for a full review. We've already tested the Motorola Moto 5G Plus and this is sort of its lighter version. So what we're dealing with here is one of the most affordable phones with 5G launched over the past few months. It's priced at around $200 up to $250 in most countries, and it's one of the most affordable handsets from a company which comes from the West this time. It's got a triple back camera here, it's got a beautiful purple back with a special hue of purple, and it's also a rather massive device with a generous screen. And the CPU you've definitely seen before, Snapdragon 750 G 5G, seen on the Xiaomi Mi 10T Lite 5G. Okay, it's time for the review, so let's get started. As far as the design is concerned, this is definitely plastic. We got a plastic back, plastic sides, and of course a glass facade. Now, what you're seeing here is a 6.7-inch screen, and the phone is definitely not compact. It's rather beefy and big, 9.9mm in thickness, and weighs 212 grams. However, the way it's made makes it somehow comfortable, believe it or not. It's pretty grippy. It has a curved backside, which makes it fit in the palm perfectly, and in spite of the large diagonal, you can easily use it with a single hand, as I'm showing you right here. Now, the colors in which the device is available in are the following. So there's something like volcanic gray or frosted silver. This is basically purple, or the color of the overcooked grape, the overripe grape, if you want to call it that way. Of course, this plastic backside gets smudgy and fingerprinty, so it's good news that we have a bundled case in the box, as you saw in our unboxing. Now, with the grip checking out and the buttons being pretty comfy, and we also have an extra button here for the Google Assistant, we go further and we address the display. What we're dealing with here is an IPS LCD LTPS 6.7-inch panel with a resolution of 2400 over 1080 pixels. It's got HDR10 Plus support, which is always a plus, and it also has a pretty large chin for extra personality. Now, as usual, when we're testing the screen, we're employing a typical YouTube clip like this one here. So let's go to it. Okay, so first things first, Motorola hasn't been placing punch holes in the center for a while now. They've been placing them in the corner. So this one here is a rather large punch hole, which may distract you from your gaming experience or video watching. Now, the screen itself, I would say it's reasonably bright. And aside from that, I would also say that it gets a weird tint when seen from the angles. It gets a bit pink or purple if you're watching the image from certain angles, so you should remember that. Now, the colors feel a bit more white. They're not exactly popping out like the AMOLEDs do, but they're pretty decently calibrated. However, keep that in mind, the whole tint stuff. I love the greens of the screen, and the black is definitely not deep, but the contrast and brightness are pretty decent. Pixels have an RGB stripes arrangement, and when we go further, let me show you the brightness test we achieved here. So we achieved this handset 432 lux units, which is pretty solid. Anything above 400 lux is a big plus for us. This value goes above the Motorola Moto G 5G Plus, the Nokia 8.3 5G, and the Huawei P40 Lite, you guessed it, 5G. It's still below the value achieved by the Xiaomi Mi 10 Lite 5G and the Oppo Reno 4 Lite. Lots of light, as you may have noticed. You can easily call this one a Lite as well. Or better said, the Moto G 5G Plus Lite, even though the name would be complicated. Now, the options for the screen are pretty basic: brightness, night light, adaptive brightness, styles, the most interesting one of them being colors. Can be set to natural, boosted, or saturated. From the factory it comes with saturated, and I think it's pretty okay. Aside from the view angles and the whole tint stuff, I'm happy with the experience of the screen. And now let's go inside the phone and see what the CPU has installed for us. I'll say it again, you've seen this processor before. It's the Qualcomm Snapdragon 750 G 5G 8nm octa-core, seen on the Xiaomi Mi 10T Lite. It's accompanied by 4 over 6 GB of RAM. In this case, we have 4 GB of RAM, as well as 64 or 128 GB of storage. Here we have 64 GB of storage, plus microSD card slot. Luckily, there's no trace of lag, so no matter what you're doing, what you're running, installing, upgrading, or playing, you'll never encounter freezes or problems. You can easily play Call of Duty Mobile if you want to, or even Asphalt 9 with a pretty snappy experience. As far as the benchmarks are concerned, we also have those here, so let's take them one by one. In the famous ANTUTU 8, as you can see, we're just above the OnePlus Nord N10 5G and above the Nokia 8.3 5G, which is much pricier. At the same time, we scored below the Redmi Note 8 Pro, which is pretty old, about 2 years or so, and below the Huawei P40 Lite, 4G, not 5G. Then we have the Geekbench 5, single core and multi-core. In the multi-core, we're beating the arch nemesis, although by a small margin, Xiaomi Mi 10 Lite 5G and Motorola Moto G 5G Plus. Once again, the core of what I'm showing you here is the fact that this Snapdragon CPU isn't very far from the Snapdragon 765G. We're also surpassing OnePlus Nord N10 and we're below the regular OnePlus Nord and the Huawei P40 Lite 5G, which has a pretty powerful Kirin processor. This is the GPU test for gamers out there. As you can see, we're beating the Poco X3 NFC and we're also beating the Realme 6 and Galaxy A71. We are, however, below the Xiaomi Mi 10T Lite, Huawei P40 Lite and Moto G 5G Plus. Overall performance was fine for me for a $200 phone. The fact that you're beating 765G Snapdragon CPUs is a pretty decent achievement. In benchmarks, we achieved 32.6 degrees Celsius, definitely no overheating, and in games 34 degrees Celsius, once again confirming that there is no overheating here. Now, on the battery front, this device is big and thick for a reason. There's a 5000 mAh battery inside, lithium polymer with a 20-watt charging. Let's see how it did. So I'm going to go here and show you the video playback time. So it's 17 hours and 45 minutes, which is actually not bad at all. It goes above OnePlus Nord, as you can well see, by about 4 minutes, but also above the Oppo Reno 4 Pro 5G and the Xiaomi Mi 10 Lite 5G, both of them landmarks in the super high mid-range segment of 2020. It's still below the achievements of the Galaxy A71, an Xperia 10 Mark II, and the Galaxy A31. Okay, so we saw how the device handled the video playback. Let's see the continuous usage. Here we have an even more impressive result. It's actually pretty close to top 10, 15 hours and 46 minutes. What this means is that we're beating the Xiaomi Mi 10 Lite 5G, Poco X3 NFC, and the Xiaomi Mi 10T Lite. Now, at the same time, we got beaten by handsets like the Moto G8 Power, Galaxy A31, and the Xiaomi Mi Note 10 Lite. The charging, I was expecting good things here, but 2 hours and 5 minutes is quite long, and after 1 hour of juicing up the device, let's see how we did. Okay, so after 1 hour of charging, we're at 75%, which is actually not bad, and after 30 minutes, just 38%. Here it should have been a bit faster. The power saving options are, I would say, rather typical. The battery saver features are just as you know them from other devices. On the acoustic front, we only have a singular speaker at the bottom, this set of holes here, and the audio jack here. There's no speaker at the top aside from the earpiece, which is for calls only, not music. Now, there's a dedicated app called Audio Effects, where I already activated the extreme bass because the device is lacking in bass and it reads to compensate. There's balanced, brilliant treble, vocalizer and flat, so let's go. I have prepared some music for you. Okay, so this is it.
Every second that I lose, I wish I could get back to. I need to find some peace of mind tonight. Noile scutece chiloțel Pampers Pants absorb instant umezeala pentru confort și protecție întreaga noapte.
Okay, so you get the idea. We're lacking bass, but we can compensate from the options. The high notes are fine, the voice is pleasing, and I found the experience to be a little bit metallic and tinny at top level if you're listening to a more intensive dubstep song. So there's that. The volume is satisfying. However, once again, if you're listening to more intense music, you may find yourself annoyed by the sound of the speaker at the top volume level. We also did some measurements with a decibel meter, and we achieved 87.4 decibels at the bottom side and 74.5 decibels at the top side. Well, basically I have to say that with this value here, we're beating the Galaxy A31 and A41, while at the same time staying below the OnePlus Nord N10 and the Huawei P40 Lite. The more impressive results is in games, 103.1 decibels, not bad at all, above Galaxy A31 and Moto G 5G Plus. However, below the Nemesis Huawei P40 Lite and Oppo Reno 4 Lite. Finally, we have arrived at the camera department, and I already talked about the cutout here, which is quite big for a 16 megapixel shooter, which takes 4 megapixel shots by default. At the back side, we have a triple camera setup here in a square module. This is the LED flash, and aside from that we have a 48 megapixel shooter which delivers 12 megapixel shots by combining pixels. It has 0.8 micron pixels, f1.7 aperture. It's accompanied by an ultra wide 8 megapixel camera with 118-degree capture and a 2 megapixel macro camera with autofocus. It films in 4K and has a new camera interface which I found to be annoying. I actually filmed in Full HD a lot because I actually could not find the area where you could change the resolution of the video. So this is the video area, and this is the area where you find the options. If you want to change video resolution, you have to press this little mark here, and here you go. This is where you swap from Full HD to 4K. It's actually not that handy, but now that I know it, it may seem like it's handier. Anyways, not a big fan of the new interface. I found the older one to be more intuitive. And now let's go to the photos and see what we achieved here. First of all, it was a pretty cloudy and snowy day. It has just snowed. And these are the results we achieved. Okay, so first of all, I have to say that the shots we've taken are pretty dark, and the pleasing fact is that I can finally praise an 8 megapixel ultra wide camera. I usually end up criticizing them for the lack of details, problem with the colors and so forth, but this time we actually have a decent 8 megapixel ultra wide camera. Some companies only deliver good results with 13 megapixel or 12 megapixel ultra wide cams, not here. This camera can take some pretty nice close-ups, however, I don't like the macros. They're pretty washed out, a bit of a gray hue here and there, so I actually prefer the close-ups with the main camera. Okay, several more shots here. I'm actually pleased with the colors when there's a bit of sun inside. Otherwise, when it's darker outside, things will feel a bit washed out. However, the tint of the colors, it's towards the more realistic side of the spectrum rather than overblown or washed out. The focus is excellent here, and the best close-ups I achieved were not with the macro camera but with the main one, and I want to highlight that again. Okay, and we also have a bokeh here with an excellent cut subject. It's cut in an excellent fashion from the background, and here we have some more colorful shots. I'm going to say it again that the colors were pretty well calibrated, although towards a darker side rather than a lit up side. And here we have some bokeh shots, this time using a human figure of a statue. All is being cut out perfectly around it, and you can actually set up the level of blur. You can increase it or decrease it, depending on how much of the background you want to figure out what's happening behind. Here we have a regular shot, an ultra wide shot for 8 megapixels. I'm pretty happy with the way the sky is rendered. This is an area where most mid-range phones mess it up, and even some high-end ones. This is the zoom test. This is a bird cage, or however you want to call it, bird's nest. And we zoomed in, and in spite of the fact that it's looking good on the small screen, on the big screen it's actually not, so digital zoom, not that impressive. A series of shots here with a pretty good level of detail. You can tell each pore and each thread of hair on the face, and actually took some bokeh shots with a pretty nice level of blur. And here we have some more colors. These are taken in a sunnier area, and you can actually see the gloss of the toys. The level of detail is quite good, even though we're working with 4 megapixel selfies and 12 megapixel shots. Now, speaking of selfies, I want to show you more of the gallery. Pretty good texture of the hair, of the eyes, of the skin, so these are actually not bad selfies. And every once in a while you can activate the moving photo option, so you can get some of those moving shots from before. And this is an example of bokeh. Everything is perfectly cut around me. There's no tree entering the scenery. We have even more shots, which you're going to see in the text review. I, for one, am pretty impressed. There are times when I felt it can actually rival the bigger brother, Moto G 5G Plus, and that's no small feature. At the same time, I feel it can easily be on par with the OnePlus Nord N10 5G and the Oppo Reno 4 Lite, as well as the Huawei P40 Lite models. These are daytime shots. Let's see the low light shots. We're changing towns, and definitely the ultra-wide leaves quite a bit to be desired. It creates some murky shots, a bit ghostly, but in general the main camera is not half bad, especially if you have the night mode activated. Without it, the shots are very gray and lifeless, but if you activate the night mode, things will get a bit more pleasing. This is most likely an ultra-wide shot, which is underwhelming. This is a bit purple hued, and this is probably with the night mode on, making the sky appear oh so blue. Now, this is a pretty decent shot, but this one is much better when the night mode is activated. If you find this to be a bit, I don't know, dim or washed out, you can definitely clear up everything with the night mode. So there's that. For a phone that's priced at $200, such shots are actually postable on social media, and that's an achievement. Okay, enough about the photos, let's talk about the videos. Okay, so for that I'm going to resort to this app here, MX Player Pro, and see how many videos we have. We have a total of 14 videos, which is actually quite a lot. The first of them were Full HD because I couldn't find the 4K toggle. And let me just start with the stabilization test. Guess what? It's actually pretty solid. We're walking around. We aren't losing focus, there's no flicker, the details are on point. And we're descending stairs. Okay, we'd go further and let's see some selfie videos. This may look fine on the small screen, but on the bigger screen you may find that the contrast is too intense, something that I also found on the Galaxy A51 and A41. One of the good news is the fact that you're getting plenty of details here. So if you're going for details in 4K videos, you'll be just as impressed as I was here and also on the Poco X3 NFC, pretty close to the Galaxy A51 and A71 details wise. And the zoom is actually pretty decent. Okay, let's go further, and one thing I must complain about though is the refocus problem. When you're panning, at the end of your pan, there will be a slight moment of refocus. No matter if you're panning vertically or horizontally, that thing will happen, and it has happened to me quite a bit. The image trembles a bit, and here we have the focus test, which is here. Focus on the foreground and on the background, alternating between them in a fast fashion, and the camera can definitely take it. Okay, so the thing to remember here, we have some pretty nice selfie filming, and the 4K video is pretty sharp, and stabilization is not half bad. And then we go to the nighttime capture, which is definitely underwhelming. It's not something you should post on social media or brag about. It shows the limits of a $200 phone, which honestly is to be expected. Most $200 phones film like this. I would be shocked if they didn't. Okay, enough about the camera. I think it's time to discuss connectivity. So for connectivity we have screenshots, but before we get to those, let's talk a bit. Now, this is a 5G phone. It obviously comes with 4G as well, plus it has Wi-Fi dual band. It also comes with NFC, plus Bluetooth 5.0, there's an USB-C port at the bottom, and we also have FM radio. For localizing we have GPS, GLONASS and Galileo, while the calls are pretty loud and clear. Now, I promised you some screenshots. Okay, so let's get out of here and go here. And here we go. These are the screenshots we achieved. So as far as the Wi-Fi test is concerned, the results are pretty impressive. We have a new router around. It's a Wi-Fi 6 router, but the phone doesn't support Wi-Fi 6, so it doesn't matter. So 537 megapixel in download and up to 484 megapixel in upload, an excellent Wi-Fi result. On 4G, also pretty good results. At 236 megapixel downloads and 64 megapixel uploads. I would say that all the values achieved here are excellent once again for a $200 phone. The software is pretty typical and pretty straightforward. This is Android 10 in a stock version. We have the Google feed, the leftmost area. We have the Google Assistant button here on the side, triggering our assistant. And we have a fingerprint scanner at the back side. Here in the dimple, you place your finger like this and you're all set. So you do this and it should unlock it pretty fast and accurately. For multitasking, we have all of those recent apps, which you can see like this. And of course, you can also use the split screen if you want to use two applications at the same time. That was a weird bit of lag I didn't like to see. And aside from that, we have stock widgets, which you can see right here. And the only customization that Motorola felt the need to implement is the Moto app. So the Moto app will let you trigger and tweak some things. So first of all, you go here and you select personalize, and you can play around with things like styles, like fonts, colors, icon shapes, layout, and more to make the phone your own, so much more than it was initially. You can also use gestures, quick capture, lift to unlock, flip for DND, pick up to silence, swipe to split. There's also the display section with options like peak display or attentive display, which aim to replace always on display. And you also have the play section with the game time for gamers, with features related to, well, basically not being bothered when playing games. Okay, and we also have media controls. Basically, you can change the tracks and do other things while listening to music when the screen is off. That's everything that Motorola brings to the table. Aside from that, we have a bunch of stock apps. You have your YouTube, your Play Store, your Chrome, your Facebook, your Google Fit, FM radio, as I promised. There's also Google One, Google Home, Maps, plus Play Store, podcasts, sheets, slides, and YouTube. Okay, I think we're about done. This has been the review of the Moto G 5G. Now, it's time for the pros and cons for purchasing this affordable, I would say even budget 5G smartphone. First of all, it's cheap, and then it offers 5G. The screen has a pretty solid brightness, and the battery life is not half bad. You can take some quality selfies with this phone, as I showed you before, and at the same time you can use a pretty loud speaker at the bottom side. Stabilization is pretty good when filming and walking around. 4K videos have quite a bit of detail and sharpness. Ultra-wide photos are finally good for an 8 megapixel camera, have a stock user interface, fast connectivity, and the night mode is a bit of a star. Those are the pros. On the cons, the device charges pretty slowly. The screen has a weird tint, as you can see. Definitely cannot take those view angles from some areas. It also doesn't deliver much bass for the speaker at the bottom side. There's some refocusing when you're panning your videos while shooting them. And low light capture was a bit of a bummer in photo and video mode unless you trigger the night mode. The macro capture was underwhelming. The new camera UI, I'm not a big fan of it, but you may be. And the contrast of selfie videos was not the best. In the end, this feels like a proper traveler's phone. Now let me tell you why. You're spending a bit for it, not very much, $200. It has 5G, it has pretty solid 4K videos, and you can upload them fast with Wi-Fi and 5G, as I showed you before. It has pretty okay selfies, so with a big battery, it's very clear that this phone is useful for traveling. Maybe not right now, but when things get going, you can definitely buy this one for your travels. Remember, large battery, good battery life, solid 4K videos, and a fast speed to upload them, and some solid selfies. So Moto G 5G is a traveler's phone for only $200, which we can recommend, perhaps even more so than the Moto G 5G Plus. This is from gsn.com. Bye bye.